All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm just getting a couple of settings taken care of here so you all can send us chats. All righty, there we go. Welcome to today's webinar. As I said, also happy spring. I feel like we're really getting into full swing here with the with the spring plants coming in. We are doing a class today on shady places and the plants that thrive there. So Peg is with us today to cover this topic, which I know is a popular one. And for those of you who are new to these webinars, I know we've been getting more and more new people coming in. This is a Zoom, it's a webinar style. It's a little bit different than a meeting. So if you're unfamiliar with this format, if you have questions during the class, hit the Q&A button on your Zoom menu. You can type your questions in there and I'll be watching those during the class to give to Peg. You can also send me a chat. If you have any issues, I'm happy to help you. This webinar is being recorded today. It will be available usually about 24 hours after the class. We'll send a follow-up email to all of you who attend with a coupon and with a link to the recording. And I'll also do a quick promotion and say if you guys want to go check out our YouTube channel, then the recordings are available there as well. And our Merrifield YouTube channel is Merrifield, I believe, oh my goodness, Merrifield Garden CT, I believe. Might be Merrifield CT. I'm realizing now I just blanked on it. But yeah, we have a YouTube channel. So all of our videos are there. Quick introduction, although I know Peg really needs none for most of you. Peg works primarily at our Fair Oaks store. You can find her in the annual section. She teaches a lot of our classes. She's been with the Garden Center for many years, did the Gardening Advisor television program back when we had that. So she's been teaching classes with us for a long time and brings a lot of good wisdom and experience to the table. So Peg, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite topics, this shade gardening thing. And it's an absolutely beautiful day today in early March. So grab your hat, grab your gloves. Mine are fox gloves, and we sell them here at the Fair Oaks location because I'm addicted to them. They're just so soft and I can just feel, touch everything. And if I'm working with something wet, I pull on one of these inexpensive little plastic gloves to keep them dry and I can still feel everything. They're a challenge to find sometimes here in the store because they don't hang well. They don't put them on the wall, so you'll find them in a basket, okay? But I love these fox gloves. So the hat, the gloves, and I want to cover a couple of things that I feel are important before we get into the actual topic. It will soon be, maybe already, tick season, mosquito season, but particularly the ticks, which bother me. It's not a funny deal. And you don't have to be a gardener to get a tick on you. I use a lot of times I wear long pants when I'm out in the garden doing serious gardening and long sleeves, okay, and a hat. And I do use the deep because it works best for me, but I don't put it on my skin. I put it on my clothes and on my hat, okay? And that seems to help a great deal. There's also a lot of natural things that work for a lot of people with small children or whatever to actually be able to put it on their skin. But I don't recommend putting this directly on your skin, but it is very important not to get ticks on you. And if you do, and you're gardening or not gardening, just walking in the woods or out among usually taller things, lawns, mowed areas are not usually a problem, but watch for those things. And then because I won't be on for a while, I want to mention a couple of other things that I absolutely do. I have mosquito traps. I have attractive containers that hold water, and I put mosquito bits. This is an all-natural product. It will not hurt the birds. It will not hurt your puppy dog. Follow the directions, and I use it in those things about every 3 weeks. And you'll know that it works if you happen to have that sitting water and you see all these little wiggle tails in it, and you put some of these bits in and go back an hour later and they're all dead. So that's one help. It's not going to get rid of them completely, but it will certainly slow them down. Now, we are in the first week of April. We've got some good weather predicted ahead of us, and hopefully we're past heavy frost damage. But now we've got Easter coming up. We've got a lot of beautiful plants that people love to have for Easter, but bear in mind that those beautiful begonias and those beautiful geraniums and some of those things are not frost hardy. And so they're wonderful out there right now. But if you see it get below 40 and get into the 30s, you may want to bring those things in and or cover them. I have been promoting this frost blanket. It's very thin. Both the rain and the sunshine goes through it, so you don't have to take it off once you put it on right away. You can either remove it if it's easy, or you can leave it for several days if it's going to be cool. And you can put it over containers and tie it down, or you can anchor it in with these pins that I love. They're like great big hairpins, and they're called sod pins. Okay, so it's worth the investment. It's reusable. I've had mine for several years, and I use it in the spring, and I use it again in the fall to take care of those frosty moments, because we don't ever know what's going to happen. But
if you could have we're getting a couple questions on this for the spray that you use for the ticks.
yes,
Name the brand.
well, the one that I use most often is Cutter.
Okay.
And it's good. It's the backwoods. Yes, it's strong. Okay. Because I don't want those problems. Okay. And as I said, I spray my shoes, I spray my pants, and I spray my long sleeve shirt when you're out doing serious gardening. I do have grandchildren that come and they've got on a short skirt, and they've got on shorts, and that's when I handle them the oils, and they're very good too for a lot of people. But for some, they don't work, and I'm allergic to one or two of those oils, and so I can't put them always on my skin, although I'm going to narrow the field and do that somewhat. But when I'm out seriously gardening, it's the deep woods DEET that I use that really works, and I'm careful with it. And the hat comes in handy because we need to shade ourselves from the sun. Now, we're not talking about sun today, we're talking about shade, okay? But usually you have bits of sun here and there anyway. So let's bring up the first picture, because I've got a lot of pictures. I want to talk about plants for sure, but a lot of times our customers need to know, how can I combine this? I am a person who believes in diversity. I don't mean one plant of everything, because there needs to be some repetition with your plants depending upon the size of your space. And so I'm saying to you, welcome to my garden. And this is what I show you most of the time, is something that's going on in the garden. And hopefully you're not going to think it's repetitive. I don't get tired of it, so I hope you won't either. And what this is the little sagina, the little moss that we have, and they're green or they're gold, and it does really well in some shady places as a little ground cover. This happens to be in a large container, and the little fairy is sitting among a dwarf cotoneaster, okay, which will grow quite well as long as it gets 6 or more hours of sunshine, okay? And in the next picture, I want to promote the fact that a shade garden is a challenge for some people, I know, but it isn't a challenge for me, because it's much more pleasant to be out in a shade garden. This is in my backyard. Granted, it is established. It is a large space. But when you see something that appeals to you, you can usually adapt it to your own space. When I'm talking about diversity, because I have a large space, I have a lot of large oak trees, which are native, and a lot of our birds, bees, and butterflies depend upon them, so that's a good thing. But that's my canopy, and I love it. But some of these things are too large for a small space, for a townhouse space. So let's drop down from the tall canopy of an oak tree or any other larger trees, and let's call those intermediate trees your canopy if you have a small space. And there are so many that fit in that category. Dogwood, for instance, is a wonderful understory tree that becomes a canopy when you don't have the tall trees. And it thrives in part shade. It needs some sunshine to flower well, but loves the part shade, dappled throughout the day or morning or evening or any kind of sunshine at any time during the day, but will adapt to some shade if it has it by building or whatever. So here, that understory for me that might be your canopy are the dogwood, the redbud, the French tree, the Japanese maple. I could go on because there's so many beautiful ones, but this is diversity. It's layering, and layering is pretty interesting. And in the next picture, this is off my back deck. And so you're looking at the bases of those tall trees. And then you're looking at what is my understory tree and could be your canopy trees. They're dogwood in bloom. My place is old. I've been there for many, many years. Not many people stay in one place as long as I have. So I have large established azaleas. Now, I love azaleas. They're beautiful. But azaleas don't really like to be in full afternoon sun. They love morning sun. They love dappled light throughout the day. And they'll take some afternoon sun. But if you plant them in full blazing sun, that's when they are often attacked by the little buggies that are such an aggravation with them. And I don't have that problem because they are in part shade. So what you're seeing here is a division. I need some lawn. I know that there are a lot of people that are promoting get rid of your lawn, do some steppables, do some other things. And that works for people who do not require a lawn. I'm blessed with a large family, and I have to have play space for them. And if you've got little children, they need play space also. Plus, this is a fairly safe place, fairly safe from the tick situation, because in a mowed lawn, they don't usually go into that area. So usually you can feel fairly easy about little ones playing on a lawn. So I have to have a lawn, because when we talk about steppables, we're talking about traffic that's rare, okay? We're not talking about playing on those things. I can't think of anything that really takes that kind of thing. So if you're thinking of getting rid of some lawn, do it in borders. And if you've got a small space, you can see that I have borders here that could be that border that you're adapting. But of course, if you are doing in sunshine, you might need afternoon sun, at least for those plants that require more sunshine. Here I'm dealing with plants that need some shade. some shade from the hottest afternoon sun. They'll take everything else, but they need some relief from the hottest afternoon sun. This area gets some afternoon sun, but it is modified by the trees, okay? And what you're seeing is a lot of ground cover here. And I do like Pachysandra. No, it is not the native Pachysandra, which is beautiful, but it's much slower to take off than this one. And I established this years ago, and there's almost no weeding required here. I have to think in terms of maintenance. Okay, next one's weeding. Now that was spring. What happens in the shady areas when summer hits? You lose a lot of that color. In the background, the dogwood has gone out of bloom. The Lakothaway, that's the mid upper ground cover type of thing, and a beautiful shrub, Lakothaway, which is good in a shady space. And there's some that's variegated and some that's solid green and some that's actually burgundy, and it's very attractive. But those things have gone out of bloom now. So where is my flower? Where are my flowers concentrated? A lot on the deck or on the outer areas. And so that's where I get my color, okay? And this is what you can do if you have a very small space, if you only have a balcony, if you only have a deck, or you have an outer patio or a small townhouse. You can utilize containers for a lot of your color. Just bear in mind that here we are, first week in April. If those things are frost sensitive, you have to either cover them, and don't cover them with plastic. You can cover them with a bed sheet. The best thing, because it's lightweight, is this frost cloth. Okay.
Peg, I have a question for you. I did for a plant ID. What is the on your previous photo? What would in the middle of the picture? There was like a ground cover in the middle bed, but at the back center, like basically right in the center of the picture.
That's the Pachysandra.
The Pachysandra. Okay, I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Pachysandra. Okay, this is the close-up of some of those understory plants. The fringe that you see there is Cheonanthus fringe tree. It is native. Of course, the azaleas are not, but I have to have my azaleas. You see, I like natives. I promote natives, but I am not an all native person. I would never give up my azaleas or give up my camellias or give up a whole lot of other things. And yes, one of the first things that the hummingbirds come to in my garden are the azaleas. Okay, so I'm not one of those that advocates that the non-native plants aren't beneficial, because in my garden they are beneficial. Okay, and the next one is a close-up of that fringe tree. This is the native fringe tree, and it is a great understory tree if you do have larger trees, or it can be your canopy. It is a lovely tree, and it is also fragrant. Okay. I wanted to show you again somewhat in depth of this area. Now think for a moment. You've got a small garden. You may be just a townhouse. Think how you can have some lawn if you need it, and or some open area that's a patio, and surround that area with some of your understory trees, like the dogwood, or like the redbud, or the fringe tree. And then you have also your beds that you create. And you can see this layering effect really well here. Layering is quite attractive. I do like the difference in the heights here. There's a lot of Japanese maple in this area too, and it's very visible in this picture because I wanted you to see what this looks like in the fall. And it's beautiful because all those maples turn this beautiful color. And there's other color there too. When the hosta goes down, it has beautiful color to it also. And the ferns, There are many things that do give you a lot of color when fall hits, okay? I'm going to go through some of these pretty quickly. All right, now this is a little closer to the deck, and it's showing you a couple of more plants that are in this area that are wonderful for park shade situation. One of them are rhododendron. Think in terms of where rhododendron grow well, and that is in the mountains, and they get misted a lot. So they don't want wet feet. They are always in a slightly forested area. They will take a lot of sun, but they really would prefer not to have the hottest afternoon sun, blazing sun, but they'll take some gracefully. But you want to plant these a little on the high side and to be sure they have excellent drainage. Now, when you do that, you're going to have to watch that if we have a drought period in the summer and the heat, and you will have to water well. Now, when we talk about watering, we're not talking about going out there and spritzing something quickly. We're talking about getting down to that root system and really being sure that you water long enough to let that soak down into that root system. And then you don't water again for several days, okay? So I love the rhododendron. I love it when it goes out of bloom because it has a nice, broad, deep green leaf. I like variegation, but there needs to be green in the garden to modify that variegation. And part of that variegation you can see vaguely anyway with the Pieris japonica because it's a variegated one. Here is another plant that, like the azaleas, is not its happiest in hot blazing afternoon sun. It'll take some afternoon sun, but it prefers to have it modified. And here again, it's subject to those red spider mites or some of those other little buggies that are very aggravating if it's in full sun. And you are seeing a lot of repetition here with the color of the Japanese maple. I have both the cascading varieties and the upright varieties. And in the next picture, you're going to see one of my favorite Japanese maples, which is very colorful in the spring and very colorful in the fall, but then is a beautiful green in the summertime. And it's the understory plant here, but it again could be a canopy plant. And what you're seeing beneath it really requires almost no weeding because it's pachysandra, it's fern, it's hosta, and the ground is completely covered here. And so I rarely have to weed in this, and maintenance is important for me, okay? And the closer view of the contrast is important in the garden. Here you have that beautiful broad leaf of the rhododendron. And then you've got the contrast of the burgundy color, but also the frilly, finer foliage of that Japanese maple. And in front of that, there is a slight border of some beautiful woodland plants that are a little more difficult to see. But in the next one, you can see some of them. Oh, are we? No, that's not the same one. Okay. Okay, here again, we're going around the corner. Okay. And we're looking at the pachysandra. Yes, I have some nandina that's there because I love the nandina. It's nice and tall. I have never had the birds eat the berries off this Nandina domestica. And I've never, in all these 60 plus years of living in the same place, never been plagued by, yes, I will get some seeding from it, but I've never had a lot of seeding from this. So if you're watchful of this, it's still a great shade plant, okay? Now, going even further around that corner, this is how I mix some of those things within my border. so that it's interesting and again requires almost no weeding. You are seeing the Pachysandra in the background. You're seeing Liriope planted closely with accents of hosta. Now, this is an area that gets some afternoon sun and everything is thriving here. Actually, there's a low growing cascading spruce here that is so beautiful with a new growth in the spring and then solidifies to a solid green in the summertime. And somebody forgot to tell this spruce that it needed full sun because it doesn't, okay? There's a couple of varieties of spruce there and they are thriving. And so as long as you get 6 to 8 hours for these so-called all sun plants, they will thrive. And these actually probably get a little less than that, and yet they're very happy, okay? And in the next one, okay, another overview of summertime, and we're pulling a little further out from those beds, and you're seeing some different plants. You're seeing a lot of fern doing incredibly well in the shade, and the addition of some boxwood beginning to appear. And on one side, there's camellias, and the golden foliage that you see is a favorite that I love for a shady area, not deep shade. We're actually not talking about deep shade here. We will discuss deep shade and also planting beneath surface rooted plants, which are typically the maples, not the Japanese maples. We're talking about the big tall maples. And fortunately, they stopped planting a lot of those Norway maples and so forth, which are not good plants really. But the bleeding heart is the golden plant that's there, and I love it very much. Okay. Here again, boxwood. I use a lot of boxwood, and this is one of the upright varieties, and there are several of those, and they can get pretty large, but they can also be maintained by carefully cutting them. Usually early April is a good time to do that, you know, but you don't want to do it past mid-July anyway. And in front of that is another great shade plant that can be a wonderful ground cover, and it's Tiarella. Heucherella is similar. It's a cross between Tiarella and Carobel's Heuchera. And then this one is again in that same border, and it's backed by camellias, and again backed by a spruce. That's a tall spruce there that a friend gave me many years ago, and it's thriving in a part shade environment. There's Dryopteris fern here. It's called Brilliant, and its foliage is indeed brilliant in the spring, and you're seeing a boxwood also. And now there's camellia. I'm particularly fond of all the ones that we call Sasanquas, the fall blooming ones. There are a lot of beautiful spring blooming ones, and there are actually some that are in bloom still here at the garden center so that you can see what they really look like. They don't like to be in full scorching hot sun either. They will take dappled light throughout the day or full morning sun, and mine have been thriving. And in the next picture, this is a close-up. Please don't ask me which variety this is. They've been in for years, and I honestly don't remember which one that is.
Hey, could we go back 2 pictures? We got a couple questions on one of the plants in that, so I want to see if we can get that
Okay.
ID'd.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. Okay. In the bottom right, is that a Japanese maple, the purple foliage?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the heart-shaped leaves at the bottom.
Those are native violets, okay? Now, I will give you warning with these native violets because they are very important to our pollinators, etc. It's amazing which ones go to the violets, but they are prolific.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to be a little careful with them. because they can be a takeover thing. I let them thrive in certain areas because I know how important they are as an early spring part of our pollinator system. Okay, so yes, it is a cascading Japanese maple. Now look what's going on in that picture. There's a lot of contrast, a lot of contrast of texture, a lot of contrast of color and height. That's important too. So think about those things when you're making a decision as to which plant you would like to have. And this is the other side of that Japanese maple. Now you're seeing some of the color of that Dryopteris, the autumn fern, and that is the variety Brilliant. You see how colorful that foliage is? And down below it, you're seeing bits of a small hosta and a pulmonaria and a row of boxwood. And in the next one, here is a fantastic plant for shade. It will grow in full sun, provided you watch the moisture in it. You might have to water it more often, but it will also take some slightly moist areas. Now, some of my varieties actually seed a great deal, not obnoxiously. I don't think about seeding as being obnoxious if it's easy to pull up. When it's difficult to remove, I'm not terribly fond of it, okay, which some of the grasses are difficult, okay? But here again, you're looking at some contrast of textures of color with the big hosta that's there, and you're seeing some ferns in the background.
Is this a stilby, Peg?
Pardon?
That is stilby.
This is a stilby. Yes, it is.
Thank
And it blooms for a long period of time.
you.
And there's a lot of different varieties. And when you plant several different varieties, then you'll get bloom maybe with a week's difference in it. And you can have some bloom for quite a long period of time. And actually, even after the substantial color is gone from this, you still have interest. You can either cut it off or you can have the interest of that dry bloom. And because I leave mine up most of the time, is probably why I get the reseeding, is really why I get the reseeding, okay? Now, in the next picture, this I think is a great example of how you can combine some of these plants as an understory for your trees. You're seeing two different kinds of fern here. And I love the Japanese painted fern because it is a color pickup for that hosta that's in the background, which the name of it is June. And it's just a really beautiful hosta. Now, I use a lot of carex. Carex, some of them will grow in hot sun, but most of them prefer not to be in the hottest sun. And that is certainly true of this one. The yellow one is Carex Avarilla. And in the background, I believe that is just smaller plants of the same thing. So we've got some repetition here. We've got two hosta, even though they're different varieties, and you've got a color pickup with the golden carex and the gold-edged hosta, and then you've got a color pickup with the Japanese painted fern and the June hosta. Okay. And this particular picture is really a fun one for me. I think, let me be sure where we are with this. I skipped over that one. All right. This is in a slightly different area, but I wanted to show you these plants because they are so important. There's all kinds of phlox. There's the little ground phlox that loves the sunshine that's in bloom right now, but I don't have that because I don't have enough sunshine for that. What I have is the woodland phlox. And again, this is native phlox. Phlox stolonifera. This one is Phlox divaricata. They bloom approximately the same time in the spring and is very attractive. There's a slight fragrance to it, and it's combined with fern and again, hosta, okay? Nice combinations. In this area, there are a lot of daffodils also. And those daffodils, when that foliage turns yellow, really is hidden a great deal by the advancing growth of the hosta. Let's come back to me for just a minute, honey. Let me reach for it, because fertilization is also important, and taking care of your soil with the types of fertilizer that you use is important also. This is the prime time to fertilize those daffodils and your other bulbs. While that green is up and it's actively growing is when it utilizes a lot of this fertilizer. And so I have found that the Espoma products are so good, and their bulb tone is excellent. And it comes in different size bags. And if you just go out and sprinkle and work a little bit into the soil, if you can, otherwise just sprinkle it around those that while they're green, as soon as you can, bulb tone really does help those daffodils. And some people ask, why are my daffodils blind? Well, usually it's because they need to be divided. And this is while when they go yellow and you can see where all the other things are, is a good time to dig those up and separate them and plant them back into the ground right away, okay? Because if you don't plant them back into the ground right away, you're going to forget, and that'll be the end of that, okay? You don't want that to happen, okay? Now, let's continue, Danny, with the pictures, and we'll come back to some things here. Okay, we talked about that. There we go. This is polygonum, and it is so interesting. It makes a wonderful ground cover also, and works beautifully with all these other plants. You can see in the background, and here again, I have different heights going on here. This one is 2.5 feet tall at least, sometimes up 3 if it's in really good soil, and backed by a cuba, okay? Now, we're talking about a few plants that the deer love, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. In the next picture, combined with all of these other things, is another favorite plant. I don't know why it's common name. Well, it's called lungwort, because that's not a very nice, it's pulmonaria. And it comes in different colors, a beautiful deep blue or a changing blue purple. And I really love this. This plant for me seeds lightly, and I'm delighted when I see it. In the next picture, you can see some other varieties of this, including the almost solid gray one that you see here. So that after it finishes blooming in the springtime, you've got this beautiful foliage that contrasts so nicely with other things. And again, this is another variety of Carax, and you're seeing some hosta in with this also. Okay, Danny, let's do the next one. All right, this is the patio just below my deck. Again, I'm saying this is where you can get some color with your containers. And there's so many options for that. I have Electrotricon in there as one of the grasses. In some of the containers, I've got geraniums. Now, this gets full morning sun, or almost full morning sun, and all of these things thrive. The Nivinium patiens, the spider plant that you see cascading out of there, and guess what? Boxwood grown in containers. Boxwood grow beautifully in containers, and they can stay in those for years, really. Every couple of years, I ease those things out, loosen up their root balls, add some fresh soil, and I'm sure try to keep them fertilized with a good all-purpose fertilizer. Let's come back to me again, Danny. Okay. When I'm talking about fertilization, I keep on hand plantains. Again, this is an Espoma product, and I like it very much. When you do things like take these things out of their containers, shake out some of the old soil, loosen up that root ball, add some fresh potting soil, and add fresh, according to the size of the container of the plantain. Now, if you're not repotting, you need to still use some of the plantain sprinkled in the top of these pots. It's all organic and it's slow release and it's good. With containers, you're constantly watering, so you're washing nutrients out and you need to replace that. There are a couple of other things that can be used if you want to go all natural. This is one that I'm trialing right now. It's all organic. It's called Neptune's Harvest, and it's a fish fertilizer, okay? And you follow the directions for that one. There's another product over here that I'm going to try because this is completely new to me, and it's organic, but it says it's slow release for 3 months. So I'm going to trial this. Quite frankly, I think it's going to be comparable to the Espoma organic, but I want to see what it's going to do, okay? So this is a good time to lightly fertilize some of your plants, okay? And either these products, which I'm leaning right now toward the plantain, okay, is a good time to work that into the soil around some of these plants, okay? Let's take another closer look at some of what's going on in that area. Boxwood, as I said to you before, does incredibly well in containers. And this is steps that are going down to a sunken patio. And you're seeing cascading Japanese maple here, and then also the taller growing Japanese maple. And you're seeing the ornamental grasses that are so valuable and is a nice contrast and a pop of color for shade. A lot of times you look for color in the plant material when you're dealing with shade. We're going to have to go through these really quickly now because we got to wrap up here. All right, here, look at the contrast here. A mass of hosta fern color contrast. Next one. Here again, a closer view of that. I mingle bulbs with everything. And the alliums are spectacular. I've even been guilty of going out when they lose their color and carefully spraying those heads purple. You have to have a little fun, you know? Okay. All right, here's a favorite plant for shade, and that's Pieris japonica. It's gone out of bloom here, but it's absolutely beautiful. This is one of the dwarfer smaller forms, and underneath that is Sarcocoa, or sweet box. That is a favorite ground cover of mine. I love it. Let's go look at this is an overview of what we've just talked about. This is layering. This is something that if you see something that you like, you can figure, okay, how do I want to use that in my garden? Okay. And in the one corner of that picture is another plant that is fantastic. And it's Osmanthus goshiki. Osmanthus goshiki. And a close-up of that in this picture, which it blooms in the fall and is so fragrant, you do not have to go right up to that plant because it comes to you. And next one, a quickie. This is a beautiful saxifraga, sometimes called the creeping strawberry, which I don't really know why, but saxifraga is the ground cover here, and the close-up of that. It blooms in the springtime and is magnificent. And in the next picture, this is a fantastic shade plant that loves moisture. It needs to be contained. And this decided it's also native, and it decided to plant itself there. And I decided that was good. because it's surrounded by hardscape. So it can't escape. And it is just beautiful. It stands sometimes 3.5 to 4 feet tall. In the next picture, because I did not include the area where I have multiple numbers of helleborus, and they are this year spectacular. They have seeded all over the place because they're very promiscuous. There's some of the newer varieties that don't seed, and some people are really like that. I don't. I like them to seed because I've never met one that I didn't like. Okay, and they are spectacular, and the deer don't eat them. Okay, next one. Another favorite thing that I did this last year, and it was a mixture where it got a fair amount of afternoon sunshine. So some of you that have shade are going to have some afternoon sunshine. And actually, the impatiens did quite well there. I love as a ground cover that absolutely fun little black mondo grass that's in the front. And there's a lot of coleus in there that's blending with those impatiens. And coming out of that is the colocasia, which is a striking plant and a conversation piece. And we'll be getting those probably in a couple of weeks. Okay, here again, Amon among the colocasia. And then the next one, deer. Let's talk briefly about deer because I do want to take some questions, okay? I do have deer, and I wish that I did not. I have consistently used a product called Bobex, and I buy the concentrate. If you only have a small space, then buy one of the spray mixers and mix it a little at the time for your small space areas. That's the most economical way to do it. And I'll use up everything as you do it. Don't leave it sitting for 2 or 3 days because it does nasty things inside of there. It's all organic. It smells not very good for several hours. And if you're out and it drifts on you, you need to hit the shower for sure. But this works for me. You have to spray it more often in the springtime because of the new growth, but it isn't washed off by rains. I do spray because they love my daylilies. They love my oriental lilies. They love the hosta. I wouldn't have any if I didn't use this, and I've used it for years and it still works for me. Some people have equal success with liquid fence. I have stuck with this because if I used both, I wouldn't know which was working. Okay, so yes, you can control it, but you have to follow your directions. And quickly through these pictures, and then we'll take some questions. Saying, did this at the entrance to Fair Oaks, and I loved it. Coleus in the background, New Guinea impatiens in the center, and the sweet potato vine in the front. And across from that, it was just so satisfying. The coleus in the back, the New Guinea impatiens in the center, and the cascading Lysomachia in the front. And here again, I have to always show you a picture of little Clara in the garden. And Clara is helping Bridget do some planting. I think she's working with a little hosta there. She is absolutely my little shadow. And, you know, work with those kids. It's Easter week and a lot of them are home from school and the weather is great. So get them outside and do some planting and they'll watch these things grow and it's fantastic. Okay, I didn't leave as much time for questions, Sally, but let's take a few.
That's all right. We'll get to as many as we can. And I noticed Clara had some child-sized gloves that were adorable.
Yeah, yes, she had used before she had used mine. She likes her hands covered.
Oh man, that's so nice. Y'all get to do that together. Okay. So I do have a question for you that I think I'm gonna refer on to David Yost, but you may have a quick tip for this. So your lawn that's in part shade, for anyone who's had issues with that, do you use like a specific seed blend, or should I refer that on to David?
Well, there's a shady blend.
Yeah.
If it's got a lot of shade. I use a tough play.
Okay, so you got
I have
enough sun for tough
so much action going on
Yeah.
mine, but it does get some sunshine too.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if you don't have a lot of sun, go with the shady blend.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. All right.
Yes.
Is your garden ever on tours? We get that question all the time.
It has been in the past, believe me.
Many times, yes.
But it's not in the immediate future. You know, there comes that time when you have a really large garden and people maybe have a lot of expectations of you that you can't keep up with. So I have to be satisfied with what I can do and try not to be dissatisfied with what I can. This is why I love really well-planted borders, planting them closely, and a lot of great ground covers. Believe me, that cuts your maintenance tremendously.
Yeah, that actually launches perfectly into really one of the main themes I've been seeing in a lot of these questions. For your ground covers, because I know a lot of these do spread. So we had a couple questions about is it difficult to keep, like the Pachysandra in particular? We had a question about the Liriope. Do they tend to take over like the lawn, or are they easy to keep them trimmed back? Like, what's been your
They don't, for me. The Liriope is my edger. I don't have to edge with that because I just run the lawnmower around it, okay? And that takes care of it. Do not plant the spreading Liriope. It is the clump form of Liriope, okay?
I didn't know there was a spreading Liriope.
Yes, there is, and you don't want it unless you've got a huge area bank and you want to hold that bank. That's different, but that's not what I'm doing. And I do not want the running. I do not.
Okay.
Now, the other thing was Pachysandra.
Yeah.
I mow around these beds, which keeps down stuff. I don't have to worry about it, you know?
Yep. Yeah. So
because I'm mowing. It's borders, it's beds, it's contained, and I mow with it.
Okay.
Somebody does.
A little bit of maintenance, but that definitely helps. Yeah, we had a lot of people asking about that.
Maintenance is very important with your landscape, you know. I didn't address aggressive root systems because I know some people have those, and it can come from the maples, it can come from birch, it can come from established cherry. And it's difficult to fight that kind of situation. You don't want to go out and just plant heavily into that root system. You need to respect the root system of whatever you're planting beneath. And sometimes it's just better to make a sitting area there, limb those things up, and put some beautiful containers in a sitting area. And not fight it, you know, not fight it. Well, as far as the other thing that I do need to mention quickly is this is a great time of year once your plants are up to see where you need to mulch. But I am a believer in leaf growth. If you don't compost, you can buy this. It is compost. It's well done. And I love it. I love to put down a couple of inches of this. I don't work it into the soil. It will work itself into the soil. And if you don't like the look of that, top it off with some Virginia Fines mulch, okay? And when you're planting, I don't think you can beat this Coast of Maine. I'm enamored with this right now, because it's got some good stuff in it, okay? Or the leaf growth, plant with that. Okay, had to mention those things.
Addresses a
Okay,
couple of the questions we had, so that's good about solar power. But I am going to add really quickly, we're having in 2 weeks, I think. I sent a link out to one person who asked a question about it, but we're actually going to have a whole class on soils and fertilizers because we get so many questions about what do I put in my garden bed, how do I get it started,
it's very important. Yeah,
we're going to have a whole class on that.
but I believe in adding things even to the top and letting it work itself in. And
Yeah.
you just can't beat leaf growth. I've recently just added a couple of inches across several little beds. Okay.
Okay. Okay, next question. And I love this question because your garden is so beautiful and established. I think a lot of people look at it and think, how can I achieve that look? So the question is, I love how tightly packed, this is from Rebecca. I love how tightly packed everything is. I assume that's because this is an established garden. For those of us who don't have that, how do we figure out how far apart to put these plants to achieve that look, especially if you're hoping to integrate like bulbs, plants like daffodils and tulips, things that will appear and disappear? I know that's been a years-long process for you, but do you have any advice for
It
people?
has been a years-long process, but you know something? Gardens don't stay the same.
Yeah, they change a lot.
Gardens change. And you know what? It doesn't matter how old you get or how long you've been in this business of growing things, and I've been in it my entire life, as in agriculture and then in horticulture. You learn something every day and you make mistakes, and that's going to happen. Okay. One thing with these daffodils, the larger ones, is when you're thinking of planting them wherever possible, plant them to the back of the border or plant them between, for instance, a daylily or a hosta, so that they have this space to grow up. And yes, those things are established. I totally agree with you. But I will be doing soon, and we're going to talk about how we can add in some things. And I do think ground covers is another one to repeat. Okay.
Yeah, we can do a ground
Because
cover
it's
class.
so important. But I'm working on one garden right now, and I want to talk about that. So it's a new garden. As I'm doing this, I used to be more patient. I'm not now. I want instant. And even if I didn't want instant, I want to plant those closer than it's recommended. You might have to go in 3 years from now and take out some part of it and put it somewhere else in the garden or give it to your friend. But I don't want to weed any more than's necessary. I don't mind some. It's you can go out and weed a little bit and not think about anything or worry about stuff. It's good, okay? But I don't want to do a lot of it. I want to plant those plants a little closer than is recommended. And I want to be sure that I put nutritious things between them, and then the mulch. And I am a believer, except on steep slopes, I'm a believer in the Virginia Fines bark mulch.
Okay. All right, I'm typing Virginia Fines for everybody because that was a question. Okay, I know we've only got a few more minutes and we have way more questions than we're going to be able to get to. But I'm just going to work my way straight down now, and we'll see if we can do a few more.
Okay.
Do you know, Peg, if the fringe tree or the redbud, which are two natives, do they come in smaller species that can live in a large container? I know you could plant a full-size tree in a container if you have a big enough container.
You absolutely, if you think for a moment about bonsai, and I'm sure most of you have seen bonsai. If you haven't, you should go to the National Arboretum and tour that bonsai area. They have been in there for years. I have a cascading Japanese maple that is in a large, it's actually terracotta, a large container sitting on a stump that started out small, and was in a container for 5 or 6 years. Unfortunately, a limb fell and broke that container, and I had to transplant it and put it in another one, but that was fine because it was time for me to root prune that anyway and put in some fresh soil. But if your container is large enough, let's say you have a deck and you have a very hot environment, it is amazing how much comfort can come from even a small tree. You can grow a dogwood. I never tried a fringe tree, but why not, you know? You can grow a Japanese maple, the upright Japanese maple, in a container. Give it a try. Yeah. But it needs a decent sized container because it's going to be in there for quite a while. And at some point, you'll ease it out. That's another thing that we need to do, Sally. We need to show them literally how to take these things out of containers and root prune and put it back in. Okay.
Yeah, there's
so many things I'd love to do.
So many things. Oh goodness. Okay, I just sent out the wrong link, guys. I'm sending out for anyone who's interested in our whole class on Japanese maples, because we have quite a few questions. I just sent a link to probably the soil and fertilizer class. Okay, there's the Japanese maples link for anybody who wants it. All right, Peg, it is 1:01 now, so let's go ahead and take one final question and then we'll wrap up. Do you have any plants you particularly like that you know are deer resistant? And I will say we also have a lot of resources on deer resistant gardening for anybody who's interested in. Contact me and I can send you whole classes on it. But Peg, do you have
that's the best thing for you to do. Okay. Because I really fight with these deer.
Yeah, I know.
A lot. And it's not just the eating, it's also the rubbing in the fall that can be a real aggravation. There are some deer resistant plants, and I'm really sorry that I didn't get to talk about some of these things. That's heavy. Okay, I absolutely love the spreading yew, because it's a very graceful plant. And it's a great foundation plant that doesn't overgrow, but the deer love it. This is so much like it, and it is not eaten by, it's called the false yew, but it's Cephalotaxis. That's a mouthful, okay? Cephalotaxis. Now, there's several varieties of this. This is low growing and spreading, and a beautiful green evergreen, and the deer don't eat it, but there are uprights also. I think I brought an upright, which is right back here. This is a small baby, okay? It's absolutely beautiful. And actually, I haven't had them eat the spruce. And I tell you, sometimes these plants forget to read the directions. And if it says full sun, they grow in part shade also. This one is Emerald Spreader, and it's a Japanese yew. Now, the deer might munch on that. They haven't munched on mine, but they might. Just gorgeous. But get in the habit of using that Bobex every now and then, and it sticks longer on some of the evergreens. But yes, there are some deer-resistant things out there, okay? Some of the spireas, which will do in part shade also. And there's some gorgeous ones out there, and they're in bloom right now. So yes, there are some deer resistant plants. Okay. It's just that I like all of them, you know. So therefore I have to fight with the deer.
Yeah, I know that's an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 1:04, so I am sorry, everybody, but we do have to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much. I'm getting some questions about native plants, which I know are a huge interest. That's another thing. We have recorded resources.
We've got a lot of paraphernalia about native plants. Yes.
Yeah, and we've got a few specialists. I don't know that we have any specifically scheduled right now, but we should have some that we're working on. Actually, I know we're working on getting some scheduled over the summer. I have been in touch with some of our specialists to do those classes. So we will have some coming up, or you can
And
email me for the
I
recording.
am very much in favor of native plants, but I am not one that says they have to all be native, because I absolutely know among the annuals, for instance, there are very few natives. And I have hummingbirds and the bees and the butterflies all over mine that I plant specifically for that purpose. And I know they're coming to them, and I know that they're using them. And I love to sit there and watch them. You know, salvia, top of the list there.
Yeah.
And a lot of these other things, and they're not native. Okay. So I am into native plants, but I'm not that only. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, it's fabulous to have options for everybody. I was talking to someone about that this weekend, about how we have options for everybody, and it's so cool how
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a controversial topic for me. It's a wonderful topic.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, once again, everybody, I am sorry we have to wrap up. You can hit reply on your confirmation email from Eventbrite. That comes to me. I can forward your questions on to Peg.
Yes.
Some of you guys had some more plant clinic related items. You can either call your preferred store or email me. I'll get you in touch with David Yost if you email me. The recording and the coupon will be available about tomorrow around lunchtime. And we are going to be taking a break for a little while from our in-person classes at our stores, just because it is peak spring. So I would say come on into the store and visit everybody. The store is full, and everyone's looking forward to seeing everyone coming to pick out their flowers. So
I would like to emphasize a little bit of that, Sally. I know we're taking more time, but this is one of the beauties of all three locations. We have fantastic, knowledgeable people that are love to answer your questions. We want our customers, our friends, to succeed. Okay.
Yes. Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peg, for joining us. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. We'll look forward to seeing you all for some online classes over the next about 6 weeks, and then we'll be resuming some in-person classes in June. So keep an eye out for that. And I think that's about it on my part. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Bye, Peg.
Bye-bye.